Good evening, welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. Tonight's class, my family and I sponsored Leilu Nishmat, my brother, Rabbi Yisrael Meir ben Sarah, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Zchut Yagen Aleinu, Amen. His yahrzeit is Monday night. So, if you want to do something good, then do something in his memory on Monday night or Tuesday this coming week. Yud Av, Yisrael Meir ben Sarah. And it's it's called Chesed Shel Emet, right? What's Chesed Shel Emet? When you do a kindness that you can't get any return. So if I do you a favor today, then there's a chance that tomorrow you'll do me a favor. So that's, even though it's an act of kindness, it's beautiful, but it's not 100% pure because there's always some reciprocation. Or even if you do me a favor today and I don't do a favor back for you tomorrow, I still say thank you. So you got some sort of credit for it. If you do a favor for somebody who's not alive, so he doesn't say thank you to you, that you hear. He does say thank you, by the way, but not that you hear. And he doesn't, he can't reciprocate in a way that you see. Happens to be, he does reciprocate in the biggest way from Shamayim, but in a materialistic level. So that's why it's called Chesed Shel Emet. And by the way, that's why the Chevra Kadisha, for example, the ones that, I'm talking about the volunteer ones, the ones that bury people, Jewish bodies voluntarily and things like that, they call themselves Chesed Shel Emet because, right, they're doing something without getting a return. Today, it became a business, they get paid. But I'm saying in a normal world, when people did things for the right reasons, they that was a form of Chesed Shel Emet. So, the Ari HaKadosh has a great length about everything to do with the souls of tzaddikim. And over there he talks about it very clearly, about what a big chesed we do for any Jewish soul, that we do anything in his memory. And if we would understand what we do, he writes, for them, then we would do so much more, and to the point that it brings such great pleasure to these souls. And this is not only something that comes from the Ari's times, right? Chazal talk about it, but Rav Akiva and others that caused children to say Kaddish, or Barachu, the Gemara's example is, in memory of their father. That's the more popular story, and what a big impact it made in Shamayim, how it turned things around in Shamayim for those people. So it's a very big deal. It's not just a theoretical thing, it's a very serious thing. So of course, if somebody has any relatives that are not alive, they should always do mitzvot and other things and have in mind Leilu Nishmatam, because it's a very, very big act of kindness that we do for them. Yeah, in this week's parasha, at the beginning we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu's prayers. Vayetchanan el Hashem ba'et hahi lemor. Moshe Rabbeinu begged HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, Chazal say that he prayed 515 prayers. Everybody knows that. And then they say if he would have prayed one more prayer, then his prayers would have been answered. So why didn't he pray the extra prayer? Because he couldn't. Because Hashem told him, don't talk to me anymore. He stopped him, because otherwise he would have. So of course there's not just the way, that's the way we hear it, but we hear this as children, honestly, and for some reason things that we hear as children, even as adults, we end up understanding like children. Obviously there's something so much deeper than that. It's not that he did this, he did that. There are big things over here going on. Why did Hashem have to tell him enough, one more prayer? Telling him enough means one more prayer, I won't be able to say no to you anymore. So it means he gave him that disclaimer too. Why did Hashem have to say that to him? Number two, what does it mean that God can't say no to him anymore? Why not? For 5:15 he could, and for 5:16 he can't. It's interesting. And the whole idea, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go into Eretz Yisrael, Yana shelo imanta bilak disheni, was a punishment, if we can call it that. So if he deserved to go into Israel, he should have. And if he didn't deserve to go into Israel, he shouldn't go. So where does his prayers play a role in that? So, Chazal teach us that, in general they say this, but every prayer, every person, every time, there's some prayer that's answered right away. There are other prayers that are answered after a short amount of time. Some prayers are answered for 30 days, for 90 days, for a year, for years. and next generation and for generations, meaning even up to 2 generations later. That means a person can say a prayer today, and it seems like nothing came out of it. He didn't get an answer. So number one, you always get answered. Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes the answer is hold on. But, okay, not an answer that you heard or that satisfied you. So the person, but then why should I pray tomorrow again? I prayed, it doesn't seem to do anything. So the answer to that why is many things. Number one, you pray because there's a mitzvah to pray, Hashem said to pray. But number two, when you have a relationship with somebody, you keep on trying to maintain the relationship. So even if something didn't work out, you don't stop, you keep on going. But number three, even if a person got this 120 and is on his deathbed, and it seems like a lot of things he prayed for didn't get him anywhere in life, he should know that even though it didn't help him, it's going to help his children, if not his children, his grandchildren, but at the most 3 generations, they're going to benefit greatly from the prayers that were prayed. We see this in many situations throughout Chazal, that prayers that people prayed seem to have not been answered, but at the end it ended up protecting the Jews years later. Now, every prayer, for reasons that can't be described in human terms, has a certain amount of time or a certain, we'll call a gauge that it needs in order for it to show its effectiveness, we'll call it. So by Moshe Rabbeinu, for whatever reason, it was 515 was the red line. So up to there, God let him pray because why not? It was a nice thing. But at the end of the day, God didn't want it to happen. Now, within somebody praying, the prayers are also impacted by who's the one who's saying the prayer. When somebody who's Yirei Shamayim prays, so on that the pasuk says, "Retzon Yireyav Yaseh." Hashem does the will of those who fear Him. In tzaddikim, their prayers are answered easier or quicker, we'll call it. And many times, what a simple person would have to pray many, many prayers for, a tzaddik in one word can accomplish. That's not a far-fetched idea. You don't have to go too far. Yeah. Our generation merited to see many Gdolei Yisrael. Amongst them, the Sarah Torah today, Rav Chaim Kanievsky. You just spend 10 minutes outside Rehov Hashbam in Bnei Brak and listen to stories of people. They walked in sick, they walked out healthy, as if nothing, yeah. And Rav Chaim doesn't even say the words, Bua. He didn't even say anything. He said Hashay Teivot of 2 words. And boom, game changer, the whole. So that's because it's Tzoni Yavi Aseh, because Baruch Hu listens to the will of those who fear Him. More than that, the Gaon writes and proves it from many places that a tzaddik doesn't make a mistake also. That even if he was wrong theoretically what he said, Hashem is going to change the way of nature and make it that it should be that way. That's why if somebody, for example, Aleinu, we should never know, asked advice from a Gadol Torah about if he should do a certain surgery. And the Gadol said, yeah, you should do it. And his friend happens to have the same situation. So that the Gadol told person A to do it is not enough for person B to decide that because he told my friend, so okay, I know the answer, so I'm going to also do it. Because no, it could be it's really wrong to do the surgery. But because the tzaddik said to do it, so now Hashem changed the nature for this person that should be something that'll help him. Or vice versa, when the tzaddik said not to do surgery. But for you, he didn't say it. He only said it for him. So for him, it applies. For you, it doesn't apply. We said about a month ago or so, maybe a little more, in a shir that there was a situation, somebody was sick, and he had a certain lung disease, and one of the poskim told him to go move to a different town. Now, he didn't tell him to move to a different town because the air is better and he'll breathe better. He told him to move to a different town because it was a machloket the shach and others, in Hilchot Shchita, if a lung that has a certain ailment is considered a treifa or not. And the shach held it's not, others held it is. There are many stories like this, by the way, about other poskim as well. So, what the Gadol told him is go live in the shach's town, and then in Shamayim they posek ta'alacha like the shach in his town, because he's the Ma'adatra over there. And then Mele, you're not sick anymore, because according to the shach, and he moved and it worked. So we see that tzaddikim have a certain power in their mouth that the regular person doesn't have. But L'maaseh, we all want to tap into that power, at least with our own prayers for ourselves to a certain extent. So there's an unbelievable Dubna Magid that explains how you could tap into that power. It's very interesting. He says a parable. The whole thing was, the Magid, everything was a parable. So, Ad kidei kach that the Vilna Gaon used to pay the Dubno Magid to be his personal Baal Musar. Today we pay rabbis not to give Musar. The Gaon paid the Dubno Magid to be his personal Baal Musar. And once the Gaon asked him, why is it that everything I ask you or that we talk about, you always give me a parable? So the Magid answered him, let me give you a parable to explain. That's an old story, by the way. The Gaon was the one who said that story. So he says a parable that goes like this. We'll call it an example because it's not really a story. It's just a. Because let's say a person did a business deal with his partner, and they bought something for one amount of money and they sold it for a higher amount of money. They doubled their money, we'll say. Amazing deal. So now the profit, they split 50-50. So one partner got paid, and now he has to give his partner his share, 50%. And he sent them 40%, not 50%. So the guy's not going to be happy about it. So he's going to call his partner and say, hello, I don't know if it was done purposely or you don't know math or what the problem is, but you didn't give me my fair share, what I deserve, so please pay the balance. And if he doesn't pay the balance, so he's going to maybe even apply pressure on him. He'll call once, twice, three times, It'll happen a few times along the way until he gets paid. When is there a situation that by healthy, and I stress healthy functioning people, because sick people, money sick people don't have boundaries in life. But a normal person doesn't put a lot of, won't do the same thing. So this is interesting, but it's the human psychology. If somebody finds out that money that he thought wasn't even his, technically is his. He did a deal with his partner, same example, this is the Magid's example. They made money. They thought they made one number, and based on that, they split the profits. A couple of years later, his partner tells him, I was just redoing the books from a few years ago and figuring things out, and I realized we actually made a little more on that than I thought. So I got to send you a few more dollars. I owe you a little bit more money. So the Magid says at that point he's not going to call his partner and harass him for the money anymore. Unfortunately, today there's sick people that would, but in the normal world, why not? Because in his mind, that wasn't even money that he ever earned. So he doesn't feel like it's his. So now he got a bonus, a gift. God sent him a gift. They recalculated, realized so that he's going to want to get it at the end, but it's not going to come with aggressive pressure. Comes the Magid and says, if a person prays today and he has few merits working for him, we'll say it very gently. It's not the biggest tzaddik to put it. He only has a few merits working for him in life. So it could be in Shamayim they're going to hold back his prayer because he's not worthy of getting what he wants, and they'll give it to him, but they first want him to pray more, so he should become a more righteous person as a result, and then he'll get what he deserves. But if he says a prayer that Chazal HaKadoshim were already mitaken, like the way we say our prayers, so then, even if he's not worthy, many times in Shamayim they're going to answer him right away, because that's already something that materialized. Those who composed those prayers on Sheikh Knesset HaGdolah and prior, depending on which prayer, they were worthy of it. So he's riding off of their merits at that point. Their merits is to get a response. More than that, the Magi adds on another thing. He said, when somebody feels that he should get something, the longer amount of time that goes by that he doesn't get it, the more unjust it feels to be. If somebody felt that he deserved whatever it was in a situation, and everybody agrees on that, and he didn't get paid for a day, not the end of the world. 30 days, maybe it's not fun, but it's also not the end of the world. You can get paid for 2 years, he already starts getting angry. He thinks about filing a lawsuit. It says, when you pray the prayers that the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah Mitaken, or Kavachomer prayers that were even from before that, so then these are prayers that to you, meaning to you specifically, weren't answered for 1,000 years, for 2,000 years, depending on the prayer. So it's much more severe. So the chance of getting answered is much better, because it seems like the debt is much older and longer and should be paid much quicker. Based on this, the Dubno Magid says, this is the pshat in the pasuk in Tehillim. Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara. Hashem is going to answer you on a day that, we should never know, a person has a struggle. that he's praying for. Why is Biyom means that day. Hashem's going to answer you on that day. Why is he going to answer you on that day? Not because you deserve it, and not because you're righteous enough to get it. Yisagevcha Shem Elokei Yaakov. He's going to answer you because you're utilizing the power of your forefathers, meaning Yaakov Avinu, as an example for the forefathers, as one of the three. So because of the Shem Yaakov, because of the name of Yaakov Avinu, so you're Yaakov Avinu's son, oh, okay, that's a different story already. So now you have more credibility. That's why we say, V'zocher chazdei avot u'mevi goel livnei v'nehem. The merit comes from the Avot HaKadoshim, but the Geulah comes to us, because we harp on their merits in order to get what we want. No. But the Maaseh, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come to say that he deserves anything, and he didn't demand. He pleaded, he even negotiated a little bit, right? Chazal have all these descriptions that he said that he's willing to go into Israel, even not as a human. Even as a version of a reincarnation, as a bird, whatever. He wanted Kedushat Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi says, "V'atchanan el Hashem ba'et ha'id lemor, bikesh matnat chinam." He asked, matnat chinam is a free gift. That's a free gift. He said, even though I don't deserve it, but anyway, afal pikein, Hashem, give me a free gift. Let me go in. So, what did he ask for? That he should go into Israel. I want to go into Israel to see, to be in Israel. And Moshe Rabbeinu had merits. Yeah, the Torah testifies on him that there was never a prophet as great as him. So and we see this was important to him because he kept on negotiating, kept on praying over and over and utilizing negotiation tactics with God in order to get the outcome. So why didn't he use his own merits? Say, God, look, I deserve it. I did so many things for me, for the Jewish nation. I deserve it. Reward me. So tzaddikim never do that. They always, for many reasons. Number one, they're humble, so they don't view it as they have merits. They just view it as they did their job. Hashem gave him life, so he did his job. But it goes a lot further than that. So the Ramchal quotes a Zohar Kadosh from Tziyat Yisharim that says that Hashem created the world in order that a person, because Hashem is Tov, is good, V'atov darko le'etiv, and the good is its nature, or it's more than just nature. The contingency in being good, one of the many, is one who does good to others. And therefore, in order for God to be God, he has to be good. In order to be good, you have to be good to others. In order to be good to others, there has to be others. So Hashem created mankind in order to be able to be good to them. And the Ramchal continues and says that, so if that's the case, okay, so create people and just make their life perfect and amazing. That's it. What do we need all the headaches for? And mitzvot and obligations and this and problems, lavdil, for what? So the Ramchal quotes a Zohar that says two very famous words: Na'amah de kisufa. Na'amah de kisufa. Bread of shame. Meaning, somebody works in a company and he worked 40 hours this week, and at the end of the week he got a paycheck in his bank. He feels very comfortable. I worked hard, I earned it. On the contrary, he thinks that his paycheck should have been double. That's the human nature. Or if somebody doesn't work and just gets free money all the time. So unfortunately in today's liberal society, the people are sick. They think that they should get free things. But normal people, when there was still something called being normal, or conservative values, then it feels uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be on the receiving end. Why are you giving me? I don't know. It doesn't. There's no such thing. Older Talmid Chacham, Rosh Shiva in Israel, told me on the phone one day last week when I was, that he says he paid attention, he's in his 80s already, he paid attention to the biggest difference by the Bnei Torah he was talking about, because that's the world that he's acquainted with, of today's generation, and what was when he was a young married college student. He said, when I was a young married college student, my father used to help me out a little bit, because I didn't have an income, and I had to live. And today, there are many college students who, their father and father-in-law help them out as well, Baruch Hashem. He says, there's one difference. Then, I used to ask, why are they doing this? They don't owe me anything, why are they giving me money? He says, today they ask, why aren't they doing more? So that's the difference between when I was a Kol student 60 years ago and today. Happens to be a chas v'shalom. I don't think he meant it legitimately, because many of these Kol students, especially the ones that are in it for the right reason, are tzaddikim and don't think like that. Chas v'shalom. We shouldn't think otherwise. I'm sorry. Can we do the questions at the end, because it's better for the video? B'kitzur, so he said. So yeah, that was his observation. Comes to Ramchal and says, if a person is always on the recipient end, he's not a giver, so he's embarrassed, he doesn't feel comfortable. Now, Amadiki Sufa, it's bread of shame. It doesn't come with the respect. There's no respect in it. It comes with a shame. The Meila, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave the Torah that people should have obligations that they have to fulfill. They'll fulfill their quota of obligations, and then whatever it means, they feel like they earned it. And if they feel like they earned it, that's Hatov Dal Kol Ha'etiv, then the good is pure good. And that's the good that God gives people. No. So, in a sefer called Apiyon Shlomo, he makes an interesting observation. He says there's also another thing when it comes to being a recipient. If two people are walking on the street, and one of them is hungry and he wants to buy lunch, and the other one's hungry too, but he doesn't want to buy lunch, for one reason, he simply doesn't have the money, he can't afford it. And the one who does have money tells the other one who doesn't have money, come, let's go to lunch, I'm going to buy you food. Knowing that his friend can't afford it. So he might say yeah out of desperation, but even if he does say, but there's a good chance that he'll say no, and even if he does say yeah, he'll feel very uncomfortable. Same story, but with two people that have what they need, that are both comfortable financially. We'll say yeah in a second without thinking twice. If anything, it should be the opposite. The one who's poor should say no. The one who's rich, the one who's poor should say yeah, because he needs it. The one who's rich, he's the one who should say no. What? So he writes over there in the Sefer, it's true, it's an interesting way of thinking, but it's true. It says that somebody who doesn't have, and you offer him what he doesn't have, he already had a chip on his shoulder for not having. Now his chip just became even bigger. Because now he knows that you know that he doesn't have. Somebody who has, okay, so right now you're paying, tomorrow I'll pay, big deal, doesn't make a difference. So he says like this, we always have complaints about Hashem. God, I prayed, I did this mitzvah, I did that, and I didn't get nothing. I have so many problems. More than that, if Hashem gives us, we don't even appreciate it. It's not that we don't appreciate it, we don't know how to deal with it, because we know we don't deserve it deep down. A tzaddik he has mitzvahs, he has merits, he deserves it and everything. So the one who has no problem accepting and doesn't have to utilize what he has in order to show it off, because he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. The other one who doesn't have, he's the one who's utilizing what he doesn't have in a disillusioned way. And also, he ends up not feeling comfortable. And Mela, based on this, he says in the Sefer Apiyon Shlomo, that's the pshat. Moshe Rabbeinu could have went to God and said, I did all these mitzvot and this and that, please, I want to get paid for it. But he didn't even think of that, because he knew he had the mitzvot. He knew Chacham Lev Yikach mitzvot, the ultimate amount of mitzvot was Moshe Rabbeinu. He was considered the Chacham Lev, the smart person who always had all the mitzvot. So, yeah, Hashem, I'm asking, give. If you tell me you're not giving, fine, next. He had to let it go. Hashem told him, Al Tosef, don't continue that. Asking, he had to let it go. But when we ask, since in the first place the whole thing is warped, because we don't have anything to come with, so suddenly it becomes demands, and if it doesn't happen, then we're also upset at God. I can tell you there's countless, I don't know how to count how many times in my life people told me, I'm so angry at God. I tell you my response, it's been consistent for 21 years straight of public service. Guess what? He's so angry at you too. Really? You're angry at God? Who are you and what's your problem? Like, really? That's my point. God forbid, don't mean God's not angry anyway. But the idea behind it, like, the whole thing makes no sense. What a crazy way of thinking. I'll tell you a good story. Good story. One day, this is a bunch of years ago, I was sitting in one of my offices and somebody came to discuss something with me. They needed whatever assistance with something. Medically related. I was very sensitive, people are not well, it's a very sad thing, and they should, we try to encourage and help in any way we can. So I was listening to the person, and I guess he didn't have a babysitter for his kid or whatever, so he brought his little child with him. And the kid was being what kids are, especially at a young age, a little bit annoying sometimes. Come on, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? Just walked into the office already, when are we leaving? And the father kept on telling the kid, oh, just wait 3 minutes, I want to talk for 3 minutes. Yeah, and I told you in advance that, no, when are we leaving? So I tried to give the kid some candy. I figured maybe that'd keep him busy. It worked for about a minute. Again, somehow we gave the kid something, some game, and he was happy, and I had a few minutes quiet. So in a few minutes quiet, I heard the medical problem, and I gave him what I thought was the solution. And afterwards, he told me, I want to ask you a spiritual question. He wasn't such an observant person. So I said, okay, what's the question? So he said, I prayed a lot to God lately that I should be healed. But it doesn't seem like he cares. Nothing got better. If anything, got worse. Doesn't seem like he cares. That's what he tells me. So I tell you the truth. I always say clearly, I'm not God, I'm not a spokesman, nor was I hired to be, nor am I qualified to be. So to answer you God's answer, I don't know. But I'll tell you the truth. From you, I'm a little bit surprised that you even have a question. So he says, why? I said, because you had a kid that was just sitting in the office, and every 2 minutes, or every 2 seconds practically, was, when are we leaving, when are we leaving, when are we leaving? And what did you tell him? Have some patience, wait a minute. Hashem's your father, and you're a kid, and you want something, and you know what he tells you? Have some patience, wait a minute. Now's not the right time. So it's not a question. I said, I feel terrible that you're suffering. I wish you wouldn't suffer. That's why I offered you a lot of free medical advice and assistance. But from there to being upset, you understand that more than anybody. You're a father who just was a live example of exactly what you're talking about. But Lamaisa, what Moshe Rabbeinu want over here? Right? So Rashi brings down Chazal that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to go to Israel to be a tourist. There's certain mitzvot in the Torah, there are mitzvot tluyot ba'aretz that you can only do in Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be able to keep all the mitzvot. In order to keep all the mitzvot, he had to be in Israel, because a mitzvah that's talui ba'aretz, that depends on Israel, you can't do in chutz la'aretz. All right, this coming year, now in Tishrei, is going to be Shemitah. Shemitah is a mitzvah tluya ba'aretz. Depends on being in Eretz Yisrael. In America, we can't keep Shemitah. Happens to be, there's a very nice thing that, I don't remember the name. If I would remember the name of the organization, I would say it actually, because I think it's such a beautiful thing. I signed up for it myself. That based on a psak of Rabbi Yashiv, if you own a piece of land in Israel, and you don't work on, you don't plan to, so you keep the Chot Shemitah, even if you're not physically there, you still get the mitzvah. Now Shemitah is the mitzvah that brings blessing. Tziviti et Birkati, Hashem says through Shemitah He's going to command His blessing to a person. So somebody in Israel, based on a psak Rabbi Yashiv, figured out, who said you have to own a piece of land that is 3 acres big? Nobody. So it has to be a shiur that it's called karka according to the halacha and Hilchot Karkaot. So he bought farmland up north in Israel in a large amount. And he subdivided it into whatever the exact amount of meters are, that it should be considered al pi halacha karka. And he provides a service. I'm sure he marks it up, but it makes no difference. He deserves it. That's his business. That you could buy off of him a piece of land for the year of Shemitah. Now you own it, and it stays empty. Nobody does anything, and you kept Shemitah. You got the mitzvah of Shemitah. And it's even though you weren't there, beautiful thing. I signed up for it. It wasn't even expensive. It was a few $100. But that's if you're looking to do more mitzvot. If you're not looking to do more mitzvot, say, okay, I'm in America. I don't have this problem. I don't have this problem. I'm here. I'm in America. I'm in Chutz La'aretz. But Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be able to keep every mitzvah that there was. So to him, his biggest problem was that there was a mitzvah out there that he wasn't able to keep. And he started negotiating with Hashem. You don't want to let me into Eretz Yisrael because of quote-unquote a sin that I did or whatever. Fine, but why should I be deprived of being able to keep the mitzvot? No. So he started negotiating. And in his negotiations, Moshe Rabbeinu titles God Hashem Elokim. Elokim is judgment. Hashem is mercy. Midat HaRachamim. No. And he continues with that theme, that God has both elements to him, judgment and mercy. So he continues. Godlecha is Midat HaRachamim, greatness. Somebody who's great is merciful. That's a contingency in greatness. Yad HaChazakah, strong hand, normally resembles fierceness. That's Midat HaDin, when Hashem deals with the world in a tough way. Then he uses a term that we have to know what it is. Asher mi'el b'shamayim. So what's kel? Is that Midat HaRachamim, or din, or neither? So simply we would say, of course, din, because Elokim, kel, comes from the same idea, whatever, right? Sounds similar. But that's not so precise, because we see psukim that seem to be directly contradictory on the matter. On one hand, the pasuk says, El zoem b'chol yom, that God Kavyachol gets angry every day. That's Midat HaDin for sure. On the other hand, Hashem, in the Yag Midot, what's God titled? El Rachum V'Chanun. Mercy, Rachum V'Chanun. It seems to be a direct contradiction. So we see that the word Kel is used in the context of judgment and is also used in the context of mercy. It's used in both contexts. No? What's shot in that? So the answer is, it doesn't contradict. Because it could be both. It could be mercy and it could be judgment. What do you mean? It's either that or that. How could it be both? So the answer is very simple. The Gemara says that if somebody hears what's considered in the Gemara, Shmu'a Kasha, bad news, lo aleinu, meaning that an immediate relative passed away, so he makes a blessing. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, the judge of truth, the objective judge. Hashem is a Kelemet, the judge of truth. No. But is that blessing always going to be like that? No. When Mashiach comes, that blessing is going to change. And the blessing is going to be Atov V'Ameitiv. Atov V'Ameitiv is a blessing that we use in many different things, but it's used for positive surprises, we'll call it. Somebody buys a new house. So, well, today I don't know because the bank owns it, not you, but assuming you bought a house and you actually own it, not the bank, then you make a blessing, Atov V'Ameitiv. Or in some situations, again, it's not halakha l'maaseh, you have to know the halachot well to do it. But if you were sitting at a meal and you were drinking wine and somebody brought a new bottle of wine from the outside, that's a better bottle of wine than what you were drinking. So in certain situations, you would also make, besides the question of Birkot HaNe'enim, you would make a blessing on it. It's something that's associated with positive additions in your life. If somebody la'aleinu had a shmu'a kasha, we should never know. So how would he say atov ma'amitiv? Just the opposite. It's Dayan Ha'emet. So, in halakha today, there's Dayan Ha'emet on the death of the person and Atov Ha'amitiv on the inheritance that you got. That's the punchline of halakha today. But that's not in Yemot HaMashiach. In Yemot HaMashiach, the whole thing is Atov Ha'amitiv. There's no more Dayan Ha'emet. It's only Atov Ha'amitiv. What's Atov Ha'amitiv? Shmu'a kasha. Somebody heard something bad. Like Atov Ha'amitiv. Elamai, the answer is very simple. In this world, we see things from this world's perspective. So from this world's perspective, we hear a Shmu'a Kasha. By Hashem, there is no Shmu'a Kasha. If it would be Kasha, it wouldn't happen. Because Hashem is a Tov. When Mashiach comes, we're not going to have the physical limitations of this world assessing things in the lens that we assess them. And Mela, by default, there's going to be no more Dayan Ha'emet, and everything's going to be Tov. Everything's going to be good. The parable that we use constantly, all the time, if a child would walk into an operating room and see that his father's chest is cut open and they're doing an open heart surgery, he would either pass out or scream at the doctors, "You're killing my father, why are you cutting him?" But when he grows older, if he goes to medical school, he'll understand nobody's killing or hurting his father. On the contrary, they actually just saved his life. So in the eyes of a child, things look one way, but in the eyes of in a trained eye, it looks very different. Same thing. We're children. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. So we see this world in the eyes of a child. So in the eyes of a child, yeah, this looks bad, and this doesn't sit well with me, and this angers me, and this. In the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is kulo tov, everything's good. What bad? No bad. The most embarrassing situation that we're going to find ourselves in is one day when we realize how every time we complain throughout our life in this world, it was the best thing in the world possible for us, we're going to feel so stupid. Just the thought of it is already frightening. That's I said in previous shiurim about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think that's what Gehenim is. We talk about the fire of Gehenna. When a person gets embarrassed, right? The Gemara says more blood goes up to his face. That's why he turns red, and as a result, he also feels warm. So he was embarrassed. He feels a little physically. He feels warm. Feels uncomfortable. That's the fire of Gehenna. You'll be so embarrassed every time you complain. Then at Tainus on Hashem, and we're upset, and this and that. Hashem was in Shamayim looking and saying, oh, "Really? Serious? I'm doing this for you. I'm trying to help you out over here." And at that point, he's going to be embarrassed. No, so Moshe Rabbeinu came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and told him like this: if by you everything's mercy, so then why do I see it as a judgment? I want to go into Israel, and to me, I see it as a judgment. And if by you things are judgment, then at least I should understand what the judgment is, or why, how do I deal with it? What's my coping mechanism? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him like this. The pasuk says, "Vayitaber Hashem bi lema'anchem." Pregnant woman in Lashon HaKodesh is called a me'uberet. Ibu is pregnancy. So Chazal say, what does it mean, Vayitaber bi Hashem lema'anchem? Ki isha me'uberet, like a pregnant woman. What's the parable of God as a pregnant woman? What does that have to do with anything? So it's brought down in the Sfarim like this: that imagine a pregnant woman's in her 4th month, and she's not a Democrat, and she doesn't believe in killing babies or anything. Just she woke up with morning sickness, and she puked, and she has heartburn, and it's uncomfortable. She's getting fat. There's a lot of things going on that are uncomfortable. She goes into the LBGYN, and she says, "Listen, doctor, there's no way I'm surviving 9 months of this. This is out of control. It's very uncomfortable. Just take the baby out today. Do a C-section, take the baby out. That's it." She doesn't want to kill the baby, God forbid. She wants the baby, whole, healthy, and everything. But she wants it in the 4th month. The doctor's going to say, in that case, it doesn't work like that. There's a certain amount of time it takes for a baby to be a baby and healthy and to be able to be born healthy. And you can't pick and choose. It doesn't work that way. Just because today you decided that you puked, so therefore you're over with it. That doesn't work like that. Because Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu that I have a plan for you, and I have a plan for the whole world. Now it happens to be that plan takes a certain amount of time. To you it doesn't sit well, so you're asking for it to happen quicker. You're going to be in Israel one day, but today is not the day. So he gave him the parable of a pregnant woman. Vayitaber bi Hashem lema'anchem. Hashem said, you have to wait the full term in order for things to come out the right way. You can't just pick when you want to do things. It doesn't work like that. No. This Shabbat is, we read in the Haftarah that Hashem consoles Am Yisrael. Nachamu, nachamu, ami yomar Elokechem. So, Chazal already discussed what's a double nachamu. Nachamu is a consolation, so Hashem consoles us. Double, what's the double language? So the Pashtut is, Ki lakta Hashem kiflayim mikol chatotea, that Hashem ki'ilu punished the Jews double. So he gave them a double thing. Of course, that's not kipshuto. We explained it in previous years. But could be there's another pshat in this. One nechama that Hashem gives Klal Yisrael is, there'll be a day that you'll understand retroactively exactly why they had to be in exile, and why Jews had to be in exile, and why things had to happen the way they happened. And everything's going to make sense to you, and it'll no longer pain you. That's one nechama. But along the way, a person's also suffering. So Hashem gives him a second nechama to give him strength throughout the time that he's struggling. So there's going to be a day that we're going to understand be'etzem that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did is going to be for the good. Now, none of us got a commandment from God not to pray anymore. Moshe Rabbeinu got a direct commandment. Don't continue talking. But none of us got that. So our test is to continue praying. Moshe Rabbeinu's test was not to continue when Hashem told him that he can't continue anymore, even though he wanted to. Our test is the exact opposite. It's to continue praying. And if Chazal say that there's a prayer that's answered for a day, 30 days, whatever, all the times, which the times are not kipshuto, it's just an example that there's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of prayer needed for something to happen. So imagine somebody will come to Shemayim after 120, and he suffered a lot in this world from a specific thing, and he prayed for it, but he prayed 3 times for it. Then he gave up, he got frustrated. And he'll see in Shemayim that if he would have prayed one more time, the rest of his life would have went without that problem. It's going to hurt him double. It's going to bother him double. Literally. He could have avoided it. That's the biggest motivation, not to give up and to continue praying. Maybe the next prayer is the one that's needed. That's the last part to the puzzle. Maybe that's it. Just one more. Maybe that's all it needs. Maybe Hashem just needs one more tear. There's a chazal like that about Binyan Beit HaMikdash. And there's a number of tears that have to be shed before Mashiach comes. And the last tear, it's going to be just that one tear that had to be shed in order for Mashiach to come. And Mamela, we have to strengthen ourselves to continue. But that takes patience. I once asked my Rebbe Zitzel, I asked him this many times, but I'm going to give you one answer on one incident. And different times he answered different things. What he thinks is the greatest tragedy of today's society. I asked him this on many occasions, and I got multiple answers, which were all true, but each one in different contexts. But most of them were answers that I expected. Chutzpah, this, that, different things that made sense to me. The destruction that technology brought into our lives. We think that we're more sophisticated. It's just the opposite. We used to actually have a normal life. When you didn't have a cell phone, your life was a lot better than when you do. Because at least you had some quiet in life. Now there's no quiet. 24 hours a day, people making you crazy. Never have 5 minutes for yourself. So I was expecting one of those type of answers. Maybe that the majority of Am Yisrael doesn't observe Torah mitzvot. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. All different things. All the normal answers that we would expect the rabbi to give. Now that day, it was actually during the month of Av. The rabbi used to go to Miron, the third week of Av, for the last, meaning at the end of the third week of Av, stay for the last week of Av, pray there Rosh Chodesh Elul, and come back in the morning of Rosh Chodesh Elul. Did that for many years. So I had the merit to be with him a few years. And then he was in his element. He was very free to say things that other times maybe he wouldn't say so simply. So he told me, "You really want to know what?" So I said, "Yeah, I want to know what." So we were sitting in the dining room of the house we rented for him in Miron. And the Rebbetzin had just made breakfast, and we were in the middle of eating breakfast. Now, I didn't want the Rebbetzin to do dishes. So I used to buy large quantities of paper goods before they went up and have it shipped to the house. But everything should be paper goods, so you shouldn't have to do any dishes. So he picked up the plastic plate and he said this. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm asking what's the greatest tragedy of our generation. He's a spiritual figure, a spiritual leader. Paper plate, what does that do anything? I didn't know I didn't know what I'm supposed to respond. So I told him, Rabbi, listen, I know you have big ways of thinking, but I'm not so smart. Maybe you want to explain me? I actually think this is a very good thing. You know how many hours of dishes we saved your wife? He said, of course, on that end it's chesed, and it's a beautiful thing and everything and that. Then he actually learned to me afterwards the very famous sugya by the Chazon Ish. If a person has something that he could do and that contradicts, it could either be that he'll do it, but it won't be honoring Shabbat, but he will have pleasure from it. I'm not talking about something that's not permissible, something that's permissible. Or he won't do it, and it won't be and he'll be honoring Shabbat, but he won't have pleasure. The example that the Chazon Ish spoke about, interestingly enough, was it was customary for the Bnei Torah when they walked on the street that they wore a hat and jacket, because that was Kvod Torah, to respect the Torah that they knew, and definitely on Shabbat. So somebody once asked the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish discusses this for the halacha aspect of it, not for the technical detail. If he's walking on the street Shabbat afternoon, going from point A to point B, and it's hot outside, and he wants to take off his hat and jacket in a place that is a eruv, Ashkenaz, or a gate for the Sephardic Jewry, so there's no problem with carrying. So if he takes off his hat and jacket, he won't be as hot. So he'll be much more comfortable on his walk. So he'll have oneg Shabbat. it'll be lessening the Kvod Shabbat. If he doesn't take off his hat and jacket, he'll have more Kvod Shabbat, but he'll have less Oneg Shabbat. So what should he do? So the Chazon Ish answered him, he should take it off. Why? He said, there's nowhere in Chazal it says that Oneg is more important than Kavod. So the Chazon Ish said, it's a svara, it's so befitting the Chazon Ish. He said, there's no such thing as respecting somebody else when it's not something you want to do. That's not respect. That's dictatorship, maybe, but it's not respect. Because if you don't want to be wearing your hat and jacket, it's already no Kvod Shabbat. So maybe at least take it off, so at least you have something. You have Oneg Shabbat at least. At least something will be left of it. So then we went, so where did this discussion come up? Rav Zilberstein, in one of his Sfarim, actually brings us down, this discussion, that I think everybody will agree that it's more upper class, we'll call it, to be served on china, to eat on china. But when you eat on china, it also comes with a consequence. It's called dishes. But some people, Baruch Hashem, have avadim and shfachot that clean the dishes for them. But there are people that can't afford it, and don't have that at home. And so when a person eats on dishes, but then there's a sink full of dishes. So what's more important? The Kvod Shabbat, to have a fancier table with dishes, or the Oneg Shabbat, to have an easier time at night and not have dishes to do? So Rav Zilberstein says, from this Chazon Ish we see that if somebody even has the question, we should tell them to use paper goods. Because then at that point, there's no Kvod Shabbat anyway, it's just Oneg. So Mamela, besides, I have another observation on this, which I know people won't like hearing, but I don't really care. I say what I think. At least on Shamayim, I'll come with a clean conscience that I said the truth the way it is. I don't think that anybody's really analyzing the Kvod Shabbat so much, except for Yechidei Zgula. And I'll prove it to you. Many times I go to people's homes, now it happens to me, I don't eat out of the house much, so meaning in other people's homes, whatever, for personal reasons. But they try to be polite and serve me something. Especially if you go to a Sephardic home, then they'll serve you everything, not just something. And they put on the table glass plates and glass cups. And I always do an interesting thing. So to drink something, I will, just to make a blessing in somebody's house. But more than that, not. So before I drink, I call one of the young kids, if there's young kids in the house. And I say, well, Mommy gave you supper before. Did she give you a glass cup or a plastic cup? Otherwise known as, is this show business for me, or is this the way the house is run? If this is the way the house is run, okay, I respect the way people choose to run their homes. But if it's show business for me, please, grow up and get a life. So many people, when there's guests on Friday night, so we put china. But when there's no guests, then we use paper goods. Use paper goods always, please. Oneg Shabbat, it's fine. Here you have a psak from Zilberstein, I gave you even a heta, you have what to float. But if you always do something and you really mean it and it doesn't bother you and it's, I'm so tired, now I got dishes to do, so then fine, Kvod Shabbat, it's a beautiful thing, strongly encouraged. No, Mamela, now let's take it to our place. Now let's take it to our place. So, a person davens once, twice, 3 times, 4, it doesn't go. It looks like it doesn't go, it's like a wall. So I also want to say something else. How do you know what it would have been without it? I don't know if you want to find out, but if you want to experiment, God forbid, but you know what it would have been without it? It would have been 10 times worse. I once had a very, very painful, uncomfortable situation. I was by a funeral of a boy who was born with an illness. Genetic muscular illness, whatever. Kid, he was 7 years old, he died. We should never know. I was by a funeral, parents burying their child. Hashem Yaakov, we should never know such things. So by the Shiva, the father asked me, what happened to all the prayers? He said, you know how many people prayed for the kid to get better and this and that? What happened to all the prayers? He wants to know what happened. Now, he wasn't asking in an attacking way at all. And I was blown away that a father who just buried a child could be so intellectually honest and grounded and not let his emotions get the best of him. So I told him 2 things. I said, number one, in Chazal it says clearly actually, Somebody prayed for somebody to get better and he didn't get better, so the prayers didn't go to waste. They work Lilu Nishmato. They help his neshama in Gan Eden. Because he becomes more righteous as a result, because of him so many people prayed so much more. So nothing went to waste. You got a better place in Gan Eden. That's number one. I said, number two, the doctors told you he has months to live. He ended up living 7 years. Maybe the reason why he lived 7 years was because of the prayers. That was the extension Hashem gave, added on years to his life. Now, I don't know, I said, I don't know how you feel or whatever, but so the emotional part I can't respond to. But the intellectual part, so that's what I mean by you don't know what it's going to be without. Or you don't know what it's going to be by the lack of. So that alone is a big thing. By the way, we mentioned from the Chazon Ish, there's a Chazon Ish that says the same thing also about effort that you make on behalf of somebody else. Meaning, let's say you have a friend who, Hashem Yagen, whatever, is caught up in not good things, and you try to put them in rehab or to help them or whatever, get them help, so that they should stand a chance to live a normal life. And everything fails. One rehab center to the next, nothing's working out. It seems like every other day back to square one. And then something tragic happened, the person's no longer here. Unfortunately, these are stories that we all know. We should never feel like we wasted our time. Because the Chazon Ish says it about this as well in a different place. He says there's no mesirut nefesh, no sacrifice that you made for something that went to waste. If it didn't help the person you did it for, so it'll help his child, and if not his child, his grandchild. Also, he uses the 3-generation term. This is very interesting. And I can tell you, my uncle Zechat Tzaddik Levacha used to tell me a lot of times, and many times he put a lot of effort into coaching somebody into becoming a Shomer Shabbat, and it didn't work. The guy, till his last day, stayed as anti-religious as could be, not just neutral, anti. He said, but it never made me give up. Why? Because I knew this Chazon Ish, and I would pay attention to his family. He says, and interestingly enough, always one of his children became a Shomer Shabbat, or became a yeshiva boy, or something. So my efforts I put into the father, and I got paid with the son. Doesn't make a difference, but at least something came out of it. When you pray today, even if it seems like nothing happened, I don't want to use expressions that we feel sometimes because it's embarrassing, quite frankly, but talk to the wall. That's the way we feel a lot of times. Maybe that's why we go pray by the kotel. So at least that's a wall that we want to talk to. You didn't. Even if it doesn't seem like it had an impact or an influence now, it has an impact and an influence. It's just a question of now or next week. It's going to have an impact and an influence. And that's why a person has to hold on. And the difference between one who's going to see the results and one who's not going to see the results, amongst many differences, is how much patience you're going to have in order to wait to see the results. One person has patience and perseverance and keeps on going, and the other person quits along the way. And this I want to end off with a parable from the Chavetz Chaim. See, I started on time, I'm finishing on time this week. Mashiach's coming, it's right. It's a sign of Mashiach going on over here. The sign of Mashiach live, you just witnessed it. Anyway, so here's a parable from the Chavetz Chaim Zitzal. Shalom Shvadon used to say this parable over every year at Shabbat Nachamu in Chavan Yeshiva, even though they were on Ben Azmanim, but there were some people from Chanichei Yeshivot that would come and whatever. So this was his Shabbat Nachamu thing that he would quote from the Chavetz Chaim. That, right, Shabbat Nachamu is all about Hashem saying, hold on a little longer and Mashiach's going to come. So Chavetz Chaim said that there were soldiers that got a notification that the king is coming to their town that day. And he expects them to be standing out to greet them. Very famous mashal. No, so they didn't know what that day means. He didn't give it time. So at the crack of dawn, they were all standing literally like soldiers, waiting. A few hours go by and a bunch of the soldiers say, okay, he didn't come. The king is an early riser. He's obviously not coming. They left. Another couple hours go by. Other guys get upset. He's making a fool out of us. They also left. And like this, as the day goes by, group after group, they're leaving. Towards the end of the day, there's 2 people left. Out of the whole big comrade of soldiers from the morning, 2. We're down to 2. And then, like 5 minutes before sunset, one tells the other, "I was so stupid that I stood out here the whole day. What a waste of time. King's not coming anyway." Aggravated, he leaves. And 5 seconds later, the king shows up. The king tells the one guy that's there, you that stayed to greet me will be rewarded with the great, biggest and the best. And the other ones, ... Comes the Chafetz Chaim and says, who's going to feel worst when they find out the news? The one who left 10 seconds ago. Right? Just hold on 10 seconds longer, you would have been a hero. Instead, now you have to deal with an upset king. Chafetz Chaim says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he gave it time that by then Mashiach has to come. And he told the Jews when they left the exile, I love you, and now hold on. And it's going to be hard, but hold on anyway. He said, so there were Jews. Throughout history, there was always Jews that are apikosim and maskilim and this and that, did terrible things. The ones who did it 1,500 years ago, the exile was still 1,500 years longer and whatever, so they gave up. It's terrible, it's tragic, but whatever. So, but now that we're in the last minutes before Mashiach, now to give up, now to ruin it. That already is the person who's going to feel worst. We got this far. We're already at the gate, at the footsteps, at the door, mamish, by the entrance of Mashiach Tzidkenu coming. So, and Chazal say clearly that before Mashiach comes, Hashem's going to shake the world on a rope. It doesn't mean literal, it's just a parable. And he's going to want to see who's going to hold on tight, who's going to still hold on. And this is our chance to grab on very, very tight and not to give up and to continue pushing and fighting for what's right and doing what's right. And whether it seems to produce results or not. Lo alechem b'cha nigmor. Our job is not to produce results. But lo ata ben chorim libatel mimena. But our job is also that we're not allowed to quit. And if we make the right choices and we go in the right way, Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to help. I know the summer started a while ago according to the Christian calendar, but I didn't speak about summer-related matters because I still have the warm taste of being a yeshiva boy that until Tisha B'Av you're in the yeshiva, and only after that starts being Azmanim, you have a 2-week and 6-day break. So now it's the time of being Azmanim. So now I can say my thoughts about summer vacation. I think it's a very good idea. It's very healthy also, physically, emotionally, mentally. Now there's a fourth wave, whatever they call it, Delta. Yeah, Delta Airlines and Corona beer, they both didn't do good for us lately. But before they shut down the country again, if you want to get out, it's a great thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to know the halachot of going on vacation. You're not allowed to put yourself into a place that you're going to do all the averos in the world. There's no heter for it. There's no posek in the world that's going to say it's okay. You're not allowed to put yourself in a place that you're going to not have access to normal kosher food, and as a result, you're going to rely on heterim that never existed to eat food that you shouldn't be eating. There's no heter for such a thing. Even to go to a place that doesn't have a minyan, there's a diyun in the poskim if you're allowed to go. Are you allowed to put yourself into a situation that you can't pray with a minyan? No, I say you are, because whatever, we have proofs for it. But I don't know if it's a chatchila, but yeah, maybe you are. So Hashem wants people to take a break. He wants people to take off. It's healthy. But just use your brains a little bit. And it's very hard to get into specifics because every person's situation in life and level of observance and other things is so different. So I have a very easy way to do this, a general rule of thumb for everybody. Before you go on vacation, just think, if Mashiach comes today, while I'm on vacation, will I be proud to go greet him from where I am? Or will I be embarrassed? So if you'll be proud to go greet him from surfing in Cancun, so then go. But if you won't be, so then don't go. If you'll be proud from greeting him from some place in Vegas, so then go. And if not, then you shouldn't be going. That's the easy measuring stick for everything. If Mashiach comes today, and I'm there, but I feel proud to go directly from there to say, I just came from to greet you. Would you be able to fill in the blank of the from? If you can fill in the blank from the from, then you're doing the best thing in the world. And if you can't fill in the blank from the from, then you shouldn't be doing it. It's that simple. And it's a shame because HaKadosh Baruch Hu does want people to go and to rest. It's very important. All Gdolei Yisrael went to rest Ben Azmanim. All Gdolei Yisrael, all the generations. Chaim Kanievsky went to Tzfat. They all, you can read books from previous generations, all the Rebbes and all the rabbis, they all went to some city. Normally it was revolved around something to do with a river or water of some sort, and they went. But they went to places that fit the guidelines of the halakha. More than that, the Rambam says that when you see Niflaot HaBoreh, the wonders of creation, It's a way that's going to bring you closer to Hashem. It's a chizuk in emunah. You're actually doing a mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah. You should learn halachot about that too. Could be able to say some blessings. Chazal say you might be able to make a blessing. Other things you might be able to make blessings on. But it's a mitzvah. Niflat haboleh is a mitzvah, literally. Niflat haboleh doesn't have to be at the other end of the world. Even somebody went to a zoo or to an aquarium and saw the marvels of creation, where Hashem made so many different types of species and creatures and animals. It's niflat haboleh, it's a wonderful thing. The Rambam says, mitoch she'yitbonen b'niflaotav, through paying attention, observing the marvels of God's creation, it's going to bring him closer to Hashem. It's going to give him more Yirat Shamayim. He's going to be a better person. So your vacation can not only be lessening your emunah, it could be the biggest chizuk of your emunah. Hashem should help. That's the way it should look. Be'ezrat Hashem, happy and healthy. Ad 120. Amen.